Well, hey, everybody, welcome to my channel. This is Meeting Wellness, and I am here with none other than Dave Feldman. Dave is the originator of the lipid energy model and the lean mass hyperresponder phenotype. If you're an LMHR, put it in the comments. I want to know if any of you are watching. Anyways, reshaping how we understand cholesterol and metabolism. As a founder of the Citizen Science Foundation, he leads groundbreaking research into lipid metabolism, cardiovascular health, and metabolic responses to ketogenic diets. Dave's work includes spearheading the Keto CTA study, which investigates how diet influences plaque progression and regression using advanced imaging, depending on who you ask. Regression, depending on who you ask. But we'll get into that later, I'm sure. Okay, sorry, that was funny, and I lost my place. And regression using advanced imaging. A passionate advocate for open science, he engages with researchers, clinicians, and the public to challenge assumptions, foster transparency, and drive innovative, data-driven insights into cardiovascular risk and human metabolism. Welcome, Dave Feldman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Christy. Happy to be on.
Awesome. So I wanted to start because I think your whole journey with this started, correct me if I'm wrong, I think around 2017, 2018, like somewhere in that range, going keto.
Technically, I started keto in March of 2015. So 11 years ago this month. Yeah.
Okay. So I was off by a few years, only a few years, you know.
Just a few years.
Take it or leave it. So you were an engineer, right? And then you're still an engineer, yes, but you were not.
Always an engineer. So
like me, once a teacher, always a teacher. Heard. But you decided to go keto. I'm assuming you can share your reasons, and then you went to the doctor and you had like a what the heck kind of a moment. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I got my A1C at a regular doctor visit of 6.1 for the second year in a row. And this was in 2015. And they said, well, we'll keep monitoring it. And I was like, I don't want to keep monitoring it. You know, diabetes is rampant in my family. How do I stop it? So I went and did what most people do. I went to the ADA website. I went to the Mayo, and I wasn't jiving for me. And so I also went to the forums, and there was a very active diabetic forum called diabetes.co.uk. And they were saying something different, which made more sense to me, which is, hey, instead of taking the advice of having more carbohydrates when your body has a problem managing glucose, have less carbohydrates that convert to the glucose, and jump on a diet that lowers it. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yep. So I lowered my carbohydrates, and both my dad and my sister got inspired to do the same. My sister had hypertension. My dad had very bad diabetes and hypertension, and both of them like going low carb with me. It was working out great for them. 6 months later, they got their blood work before I did. And I warned them that I'd heard that cholesterol could go up, but it didn't go up that much for them. And then I got my blood work. And then I got shocked because my cholesterol had doubled. And it was shell shocked and just blown. I didn't know what to do. And so I became obsessed with trying to figure out why. Not only why did my cholesterol go up, but why didn't it go up for my sister and my dad? And that's what started this obsession with the lipid energy model you mentioned earlier.
Okay, so then I think the first thing you did, because I got interested in you because I, like you, went on a ketogenic diet, not diabetic, just to lose 20 pounds, right? No big deal. And then later went to my doctor thinking in my mind, like, I'm going to show my doctor that, a carnivore ketogenic diet can be healthy. And then my cholesterol came back similar to yours, and she thought I should be dead yesterday. Like it was a whole thing. And that's kind of how I got interested, obviously, in your work. So I'm like, well, since I am one of these people where the LDL goes up, but so does the HDL, and the triglycerides are looking pretty good, I should probably learn more about this. And so I saw that you started, a first thing you did was not to, I don't think anyways, to think about LMHR, but to start doing experiments on your cholesterol. Because I was always of the impression growing up, what I knew, because I grew up in the 80s. And so all the grownups at that time were like, got to watch that cholesterol. The doctor said, got to lower my cholesterol. Watch those triglycerides. Don't eat eggs. This is like the stuff I'm hearing as a kid, right? About cholesterol. But I always was under the impression that you couldn't change it very much. Like no matter what they seem to be doing, well, I did that and my cholesterol's still high. Like it just didn't ever, nobody seemed to change it. It was always just this nebulous concern, you know? So you started doing a bunch of self-experimenting, and I think you made some pretty interesting discoveries when you did that. I'd love it if you would share those.
Yeah. So technically my first experiment was the unintentional one, and it was just my second blood test. I got the first blood test that was so shocking. And then I got depressed. This actually gets covered in the documentary. My being depressed, my appetite fell off. And I thought, oh, hey, that's actually probably a good thing then, because then I'm having less fat and especially less saturated fat. So when I get this second blood test, since I will have eaten less and less fat, hey, if it's the saturated fat that's driving my cholesterol up, it should go down, right? Mm-hmm. But it didn't go down. In fact, it increased another 100 milligrams per deciliter in the second test.
Okay, wait. So the less saturated fat you ate, the higher your cholesterol got.
Right.
Okay.
And that was a real key moment for me. That was December 9th of 2015. And the reason I know that date real well is that was a catalyst point. That was a moment where I went from being, 90% afraid to being more like 50% afraid, 50% ultra curious. And yes, I then started tracking my food carefully to find out how much this was connected back to my food and my cholesterol, and started doing more rapid testing, and then started doing experiments. I was like, well, wait a sec. If eating less brings my cholesterol up, what if I eat more? What if I eat a huge amount of food, even if it's on a ketogenic ratio? Then what? And sure enough, it went the other direction. I brought my cholesterol way down by eating a whole lot of food, right? Even if it was a ketogenic diet, even if it was full of saturated fat, tons of saturated fat, didn't matter. It brought the cholesterol down. And that was the first pattern. You may have heard me talk about it back in the day, called the inversion pattern. Mm-hmm. My baseline might be here while I was on a keto diet, but if I ate more, then the cholesterol would go down. So the food would go up, the cholesterol would go down, and then vice versa.
I've seen those graphs. Like you made graphs. I saw them. Yeah. I sent it to my mom because she went keto shortly after me. And then she was gonna go get her cholesterol. And I was like, okay, just in case. And I sent her one of your videos, and I sent her that inversion graph. And I was like, just in case, if you want to try to, change it real quick, here's what you do.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, that what was neat about those early couple of years is that as I kept keeping track of it, I kept thinking, actually, this is starting to tell me more about what's going on. Because as you mentioned, even the people I was making friends with that were in research, especially in lipidology, they were like, oh, we didn't even know it can move this fast. And I would, well, then why aren't you doing more research on that and actually trying to find it? And I realized that the way a lot of this research is conducted is that they assume a lot of that is noise. A lot of that variation within a few days is just statistical noise. They don't necessarily incorporate how much of it is actually biological, is actually metabolism based. And if you're fat adapted, well, then your cholesterol might move up and down more than somebody who's on a mixed diet. And that was the beginning of the lipid energy model, was, maybe because the thing that powers us ride shares with cholesterol in these submarines that are packed with the fat we're powered by. Mm-hmm. maybe that explains why these cholesterol levels move up and down in the way that they do. And here I am back in 2026, and I'm like, yep, that was so far the evidence seems to back it up. The lipid energy model of the models out there seems to make the most sense, particularly with lean mass hyperresponders.
Okay, I'm gonna pause my interview because I have like some questions sort of laid out, although I'm ad-libbing to some extent. However, at this point, because of what you just said, I'm gonna pause. I'm at a personal question here. Those of you that are watching, if you have a question about anything cholesterol related that you want to ask Dave, put it in the chat with a QQQ or something so that I don't miss it. But as I said, when I first started, I ended up, I don't remember the exact numbers because it was 2 years ago, but my LDL, I was one of those like well over 400. Like it wasn't 500, but it was like well over 400. But I was about 20 pounds leaner than I am right now. So I'm still, my BMI is still, I don't know, like 22 or 23, but it's not like 18, right?
Right.
Whatever those numbers are. Anyways, when I got my second blood test after putting on a few pounds, although still being relatively lean, my LDL still lean mass hyperresponder territory, but like almost cut in half, like high 200s instead of, look at his head. He's like, that's what can you explain for me and for people watching if they are, curious about this? Because I was like, wow, that's interesting. So am I more healthy now because my LDL is lower, but like I gained 20? Like, am I more healthy now? Like I need to get back. I'm working on it. But you know what I'm saying? I'm like, does that make me more healthy? My LDL is lower. Doctor, are you happier now?
Yeah, I'm sure medical professionals would be happier with your LDL being lower, relatively speaking. The word healthier is kind of a loaded term. So
yes,
here's what Engineer Dave would say. So, my colleague, Nick Norwitz, he's crazy lean. As I would expect, his LDL cholesterol is through the roof. It's in the 500s. His total cholesterol is 700, right? So what's going on there? Mine's like 250 to 270-ish, my LDL. Why is there a difference between him and I? And why, when I also was leaner, like you, when my BMI got a lot lower, especially very early on, did I see my cholesterol get to the highest the leaner I got? Okay, so now we're going to get a little geeky. Are you ready?
Let's get geeky. I love it.
You have fat all around your body called subcutaneous fat, right?
Yep.
And we're gonna call that the healthy, active. They're in the game, right? They're not like that visceral fat or ectopic fat. They're pretty active. They're an active endocrine organ, and they're staging and pacing fat coming in and out. Now, the catch is that if you have a lot of subcutaneous fat on you, well, there's not a lot of reason to mobilize it all around your body because there's enough of it near the tissue that's using it. So I'm flexing my hand here, right? And that's all I'm doing. I'm just going to flex my hand like crazy. Well, then the subcutaneous fat all around, say, my forearm, is it going to have the same level of adequacy? Is it the local availability of the fat going to provide more if I have a lot of it than if I have less of it? And the answer to that question is yes, right? So if I'm really lean and I'm doing this at some threshold, I'm telling my body, hey, mobilize more fat from all over so that we can help out the forearm muscle to be able to handle the flex, right? And the body's pretty smart. It has a number of different hormones. Leptin's a great example. If you want to get really into the weeds, there's ANGPTL, things like that, where they will distinguish how much that subcutaneous fat is actively releasing fat back out. And the more globally you need it, the more that becomes relevant, because if you have less subcutaneous fat but more muscle mass and more activity, say from your heart, that's making use of it more of them need to jump into the game to help you out, right? That's why a lot of people who were previously on Atkins before low carb got as big as it is, or before keto, did not see this lean mass hyperresponder phenotype. And it's because they were moving from metabolically challenged to metabolically healthy, but not necessarily super lean. A lot of people who are really overweight move to less overweight, but don't necessarily become lean and don't necessarily go so low carb that become lean mass hyperresponders. To be totally powered by fat and to be metabolically lean, I would argue you're going to find a lot of those folks are going to, I believe, turn into this phenotype. It has a lot to do with those fat cells. So does that make sense that the global mobilization ends up being a big factor?
Yeah, that makes total sense, because in any one spot in my body, when my BMI is super low, any one spot needs that fat to get there. So it's moving around my body a lot more in my bloodstream, causing that LDL number to go up even higher. Yeah. Did I summarize that correctly? Yeah. Okay.
Are you familiar with the condition known as lipedema?
Yes.
Okay. So can those who have lipedema exhibit the lean mass hyperresponder phenotype, even though they can be at a higher BMI? And the answer to that question is yes. They help to provide even more evidence for the lipid energy model, because remember what I said, the subcutaneous fat that's active, that's online.
Okay. So their lipedema fat is not active. It's like trapped, right? It's like all in some kind of fibrous stuff, I think, if I'm correct, or it's kind of stuck there. So their body could not utilize that?
It's less accessible.
Okay.
And therefore the staging and pacing rotation is reduced there. Mm-hmm. So you could quite literally have somebody with lipedema that actually has lower fat active subcutaneous fat mass that's comparable to somebody else who's really lean. And therefore, as long as they still maintain some degree of good metabolic health, can actually exhibit the same phenotype. And that kind of backs up this hypothesis that I'm describing to you now, that it really is about this relationship with your fat mass and that turnover.
Okay. Wow. That's super. Like, I knew when it happened that I was like, I know that's in there, but thank you for explaining that, because I wasn't exactly sure of what the mechanism might be behind it. So that's super cool. Okay. So we were talking about your personal experiments and how it was super cool that you've learned, you geeked out a little bit and got a little less worried and more curious when you saw, wow, I could change my cholesterol numbers within days, just by eating more or less. Did other people decide to do that too? Like, once you discovered that, did that spark other people's curiosity, and did they kind of try it out too?
Yep. The cholesterolcode.com was my blog. I still occasionally post to it, but not that often anymore. Now it's becoming the movie. Mm-hmm. But the blog, I would share these experiments I was doing, the inversion pattern. I would discuss, it was coming into the year following that I started to realize hepatic glycogen stores may be the real activator, hepatic being the liver, that once you go low carb enough and the glycogen is stored glucose, once the stored glucose in the liver gets low enough, it sets off this cascade, which gets a bit complicated, gets into the HPA axis and the thyroid and so forth. But basically, bottom line is the body goes, oh, we're not topped off with glucose. Let's get the fat going more, right? And that ended up being another thing that, because I was blogging about it and doing experiments on it, other people could also test that aspect too. Nick's rather famous Oreo cookie experiment leverages that component because he's re-upping his glycogen stores in the liver. And that in turn takes him out of being a lean mass hyperresponder phenotype. And there you go. You end up with something like that. But on top of that, it's great because when you're blogging, you're sharing it in real time. It's back to the citizen science creed. Somebody suggested something I hadn't thought of before, which is, oh, hey, there's actually diseases of glycogen storage called glycogen storage disease. And there's a type called glycogen storage disease 1A. If you have it, hey, would that induce something comparable to the lean mass hyperresponder phenotype? And spoiler alert, it does. It's not exactly the same because triglycerides go up as well. But the argument would be that no, triglycerides are going up because they're staying on a mixed diet. So their ability to park those triglycerides are not the same because their subcutaneous fat is not doing the same staging and pacing because they're not fat adapted.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay. So my question is, how do we bridge the gap from just doing some, blogging on Cholesterol Code website and doing these experiments and other people kind of following suit and, hey, this is really cool, to I think I want to found this citizen science foundation and let's get some donations and let's do a study. How did we go from I'm blogging about this to I'm going all full steam ahead?
Well, so we've been talking about the mechanisms, but there was just this larger question of risk. It's like, hey, wait a sec, but is this risky? And I had this crazy idea, still kind of do, which is that, hey, unfortunately, all of the studies that we're looking at that make this association between LDL and plaque development in the heart, well, they all tend to be part of people who already have metabolic disease, or they have some kind of congenital disease, things that cluster together other cardiovascular risk factors with what then also changes their lipid profile. And this is where lean mass hyperresponders provide us a powerful scientific opportunity. Lean mass hyperresponders, again, for people who don't know, are those who have very high LDL, but also, probably like you, have high HDL and low triglycerides. So that triad, those three. We didn't have this before. We didn't have people with sky high LDL, but who otherwise are metabolically healthy and don't have any of these other things that are in the cluster. And so I started writing emails. I started tweeting. I was like, hey, what lipidologist team or cardiologist team wants to study this? And I did that for 2 years, from 2017 to 2019.
Wow.
And then in 2019, I was like, I can't, it doesn't work. I can't get these guys to be interested enough to study this group of people. It doesn't, there's no, I'm sorry to just put this plainly, but there's no business model. There's no way to gain something other than interesting research. And I naively thought at that time there was just more money floating around for interesting research, especially on what I would argue is the most famous molecule in the world, cholesterol. I don't know. You would think, hey, if it could turn out that folks like you and me are low risk, I mean, wouldn't that be an amazing discovery when it's thought that everybody who has high LDL is at high risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So eventually in 2019, I was like, I'm gonna take a Hail Mary pass. I'm gonna go ahead and found this organization called Citizen Science Foundation. It's gonna be a public charity. And before I take a single dollar from anybody, I'm gonna make sure I've got all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Because if I was right, that indeed lean mass hyperresponders at a population level are low risk, then of course it would get highly scrutinized. Any research we did around these folks would be highly, highly scrutinized. So we need to have all of our ducks in a row as best as we can. And then on a Houston stage in October of 2019, I announced this existence of this charity and said, I'm going for it. I'm going to try to make a study where we put together a group of lean mass hyperresponders and we study their hearts and find out with high resolution heart scans if indeed they're at a higher risk.
Okay, that's awesome. I have more questions for you, but first, Dustin has a question for you. Dustin just recently got his official health coaching certificate, whatever you want to say. So his question for you, Dave, is, I went looking, trying to find the Feldman protocol to help a friend and was not able to find it. Is it listed on your blog page?
It is no longer listed on the blog page. Part of the challenge is that I'm now working with research partners. In working with research partners, they're a lot more sensitive to what I'm saying, what I'm doing, especially if it might be considered, even if I'm being clear that it's not to be taken this way, as medical advice, or that there's anything in any way that could be connected to something like that. And so it's been a challenge because coming from the engineering world, I mean, one of our favorite phrases is move fast, break things, right? And in the world of medicine, it's like, no, move slow. Just be careful. It's don't. And I get it, right? But to that extent, that's why I've had to be more mindful of just doing what I can to get the research to move forward so that we can make better decisions on that. So unfortunately, no, it's no longer in the blog post. And if I did know where it was, I shouldn't be talking about it on a podcast.
Got you. Okay. So you founded the Citizen Science Foundation. I said founded twice. That was bad. Anyways, was that around the same time as Own Your Labs? Like, does Own Your Labs, is that helping to fund that, or is that a whole separate thing?
Yeah. Own Your Labs, we officially started in the beginning of 2020. What we do is, you could almost think about it as like Amazon for blood testing. People can go onto Own Your Lab site and they choose what blood test that they want to have. And then basically we have an ordering physician that makes all the orders for us, licensed in every state. And then we have a platform that helps deliver. And then the person gets a requisition sheet and then they can go get their blood work. And part of how this came about was these experiments. I would keep doing these experiments and I would talk to people about it, and they're like, I want to do things. Heck, I just want to get one insulin test. My doctor won't order it. And this was something where I kept going, we should just make a site and then just put it in there. But I wanted one other thing that we've had since the beginning, which is I wanted the site to incentivize people to share their anonymized data for the good of the community. And so we have a checkbox, we always have, where people can get 10% off of their order if they share their anonymized data. They fill out a few more things for demographic information, but their first name, last name, city, date of birth is all redacted. And what we're doing is we're putting together this data set that we want to make free of charge and without reservation. It'll eventually be posted. We have to go through some hoops with having an IRB and so forth. But the whole point of that is that there's not a lot of open access data on health, particularly of low carbers. And we wanted to help with that part of it. Now, getting back to Own Your Labs, helping with the Citizen Science Foundation, yes, a lot of the expenses of the Citizen Science Foundation are paid for by Own Your Labs, even though we've raised a lot of money for the CSF. Our creed has always been that we want to keep our administrative costs as low as possible. I myself like to give to a charity that I know they're not charging a lot off the top for like staffing and all that stuff. And so we've maintained a 0% admin overhead this entire time. And we've had 3 conferences where every dollar we've raised from the attendees, every dollar we've raised heads towards the research minus third-party things like credit card processing fees or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, our efficiency rate is something like 96%. Like I think there's only 4% that goes out, and it's, again, only third-party processing fees and Donor Box, which is like the charity platform. But we're very proud of that record. And Own Your Labs helps make it possible. So thanks for the opportunity on the plug. If anybody is getting anything through Own Your Labs, you're also helping out the charity as well.
That's right. So I'll give it one more plug for you have a lot bigger following than I do, but here we go. I used Own Your Labs because my doctor would not do a bunch of tests. Once my LDL was like, oh no, you're going on a statin or changing your diet or whatever. And I was like, look, I don't want to do that. Can we agree to disagree? And can you please give me a fasting insulin and some other things, thyroid? And she just flat out refused. So I just went to Own Your Labs, checked off all the tests I wanted. It was super. I even had the particle density test done because I was just at that time. I don't think I knew yet that if you had kind of that, you're likely pattern A. I didn't know that yet. So I was like, let me just test it and see. So yeah, pattern A, it fell off the bottom of the graph, for the number of, I'm so pattern A. It's not even funny. But anyway, fasting insulin, all that stuff that my doctor just refused to do, I was able to do. And the process was super, super easy. And I did check the little box. So my data will be included in your data.
Yeah.
So that's, yay, that's super cool. So if anyone is has a thought about using it, it is super easy to do. And oh, look, Dustin is shouting it out too. So here we go. I shout out Own Your Labs all the time because so often I hear my doctor won't order this or that. I tell them to go get whatever you want when you want. So there you go. Super easy. And okay, you said something else. I'll probably think of it in a minute. You sparked me to think of something else and I should have jotted it down, but I was like on the Own Your Labs thing.
Is it getting insulin? Because I have to say I'm a huge fan of that. I feel like,
oh, let's get into it. So my fasting insulin was 4, and that was like a couple years ago. I had been carnivore for 9 months at that time. So I don't know what it is now. I just haven't gotten a lot of blood work, but I was happy with a 4, back then.
Yeah. So and what it comes down to is if you're fat adapted, I would have an expectation that your insulin levels would be lower. It kind of needs to be to ultimately get the fat levels out. If you're hyperinsulinemic, which is to say your insulin levels are high, particularly when you're fasted, it's something worth working on. there's a lot of disease downstream of that. And we cover that actually within the documentary. Is we cover how much, when you compare LDL to insulin, what a massive difference that is in the hazard ratios. So I think it should be a part of every basic blood test, but a key component is to be sure you get it fasted. There's no good reason for your insulin, which is an anabolic hormone, to be high after you've been 12 hours fasted. That's definitely the point where you should be getting access to your fat stores to keep you powered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I wish I could shout from the rooftops. I'm like one of the only carnivores I know, and I know a lot of people with like, I'm pre-diabetes and now I'm full-blown type 2, and I'm like, sometimes I just keep my mouth shut. But a lot of times I try to do that, but then at the same time, it's like, oh, I feel like I could help you so much if I just said a few things. But then they're not going to take me seriously anyway. They're just going to do what their doctor says, which may or may not always be, but agree with what I say. And so they're probably going to listen to their doctor. That's how I was. I don't think I would have fired that. I did fire that doctor, by the way, but I don't think I would have had the gumption to get out there and fire that doctor if I wasn't sort of in this space and online and, listening to like it was the conference, that I wanted to shout out, but going to things like your conference, where you get to actually, I'm not the only one and there's more of us out there, and you go to a room and you don't think you're crazy because we're all kind of like-minded. So I know you said you had 3 conferences. I went to the 3rd one, which was just like the other weekend. That's where I met you. It was super awesome. I know you said that's the last one, but if Dave ever does another conference, I would highly recommend it. You guys, I got to meet Dr. Barry. That's the whole, Dave Feldman was definitely the whole reason I went. And no, I wanted to meet you too, but Dr. Barry was the one. Finding his channel was what even got me into, understanding about any of this. And so that was super cool. But yeah, it was a really great conference. I learned a lot and I socialized a lot with like-minded people.
I will say that Sharon, who is definitely the, we'll call it showrunner, if you will, of the conference, we had both talked a lot about this being the last one. I will say that by the end, there was like so much, let's just say on the thank you side and the, kudos side, that she said, well, the needle may have moved a little. And so where I think we left it is it's possible there'll be a 4th one, but for sure there's not going to be one next year. But it's possible.
Okay, so we might like skip a year, let everybody get their energy back up. So if you do that, this is Dustin again. Yeah, I told Dave I was going to try and go next year. He said, no, you won't. Ha! I'm sure he said it just like that with his head.
No, you won't.
No, you won't. But you know what? I hope you do, because Dustin is one of the people I have not met in real life yet. Like, I've met a lot of these people in real life at like Hack Your Health and things like that. And so I would love to meet Dustin. So Dustin, if there is another conference, I'm going to hold you to that so that we can meet in person. That would be super cool.
Now, to be fair, given where you're at, Christy, there's one, I believe, in San Diego, right? Isn't that where the
yes.
I think that's where Low Carb USA, but I think it's now renamed the Symposium of Metabolic Health. That's Doug Reynolds' conference. It's a really good one.
Yes.
And I'll probably be there this coming year
Yeah,
too.
I think you were there at one of them. I went down and met up with some people for lunch. The problem with that conference for me is that it's always in August and it's like literally like the first week of school. And I'm like, I cannot take, it's always like a Thursday through Sunday, and I don't want to just go to half, whatever. So I'm like, I can't take Thursday and Friday off the first week of school. Like that just can't, I'm shooting myself in the foot if I do that, because I'm trying to set up my new class, get the rules down, and I can't just take off, unfortunately. But I went and like met up with some people down there because it is close enough that I was able to do that. Healing Humanity, which is, I don't know if you know, but it's a documentary, a carnivore documentary that some people are making, and they do meetups, and they had one in San Diego, and I was able to go to that and actually was a speaker. So that was interesting. Like my first public speaking experience that wasn't in front of children. So that was cool. I wish the low carb San Diego, or whatever it's called now, Symposium for Metabolic Health, if it wasn't that exact weekend, so if they ever tweak the date, back would be better, because then school wouldn't have started yet, and I
think they may have done that this year. I just don't remember if it's earlier or later.
I thought I looked, and I think that it is the first weekend of my school, but I'll go double check. Because yes, I've heard it's really good from like Jenny Middich and some other people have told me that it's excellent. And yes, it is close. Although I enjoy a good drive to Vegas, like for your conference, like to Vegas, that's a perfect spot for me, because I don't have to get on a plane. It's like like a 3.5 hour drive for me, and I'm there.
I go to LA all the time, and I like the drive to LA. It's just the right amount. I used to not like road trips. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but I feel like I like road trips now more, because I have a Tesla, and I love the Tesla for a road driving experience. But the other part of it is it's kind of like this excuse to not be taking emails and doing meetings and so forth. So I've enjoyed that. That's been a nice perk, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for me it is. It's like by myself, like a little introvert time, a little quiet time. No email. You're right. No emails. No students bugging me. No kids. No, just there. I enjoy it. It's kind of the perfect amount of time for me too. All right. So you founded the Citizen Science Foundation. You've got Own Your Labs to fund it. You're doing conferences to fund it. What in the heck is the Citizen Science Foundation doing? What are you doing with the research and stuff?
Yeah. So of course there's the original study, Keto CTA. We have the preprint of the final analysis, which is Q-angio, METIS Q-angio, and also it includes heart flow. Those are the two analyses that are up right now. So people can go to cholesterolcode.com/papers and look at the preprint that's up down at the bottom. There's a larger story if you want to talk about with last year with the April 7th paper. That was the Clearly analysis. That one got really interesting. But but as far as the major aspects of this study overall, the Keto CTA study, it's technically complete on what its original scope was, which was to get two scans, a baseline and a follow-up. Baseline scan is, you can call it visit 1. Follow-up is visit 2, which is about a year later for each of the participants based on when they got their baseline. And then you're able to make a population comparison between the two. And that we've had a total of 4 analyses of those 200 scans, and all but the Clearly analysis shows that they're overall cohort-wide, they're a low average. Which was surprising to the researchers. They were actually quite shocked by this. It is heterogeneous in that there is a subset that are more rapid progressors, but there's also a large subset that are regressors that actually have less plaque in their follow-up scans than their first scans. But one of the biggest, most important findings is that there was no association, none, between baseline LDL or baseline ApoB and future plaque progression. And that's a pretty big deal. Now, I said that was the original scope. The reason I said that is because we may be doing a 3rd set of scans. I'm negotiating that right now. We've got funding for it. And basically, we're going to see how many of those same participants we re-recruit to then do another set of scans. Who knows? It may be as much as 60 or 70% of them. And if so, that'll be golden data because there'll be 5-year scans. There'll be 5 years since the first scan they took. And given the average amount of time they've been on the ketogenic diet is about 4.5 years, this would be like 9.5-year data, which would be phenomenal. It'd be some of the most powerful data in imaging.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the average age like 55, right? So we're not talking about spring chickens here. Right. Like I'm 50, so this is super interesting to me because we're talking about, right in my age range. And that's about the time you would kind of expect any 55-year-old to maybe have some plaque, your average 55-year-old probably, progressing and things like that. So is that accurate, what I said?
Yeah, I hope people will take this the way I mean it as a scientist, but I was excited that we had middle-aged people because they likely would have plaque at baseline, and we'd likely be able to see, we'd be able to track the plaque for follow-up. Now, here's the big irony. The big irony is they didn't have a lot of plaque at baseline, cohort-wide.
Right.
And a small subset did, which you would expect with any middle-aged population, no matter what your demographic. And I would expect, and I said this even before we had all the follow-up scans, that population-wide, you would see progression, even if it was just a small amount of progression. Or just another way of putting it is, you're not going to put a population in front of me that's middle-aged and sizable for which there's not going to be plaque progression. Like that's just the world, right?
Right.
But that said, given the average LDL was 245, I want to say something like that, and especially given we have 6 of our participants that have an LDL of 400 or higher, the expectation would be that they would have very rapid plaque progression, and that it would correlate. The more and more LDL and ApoB, the more there would be an association between that and the plaque progression. That's just not at all what we're seeing in the data. Like it's not even close. There's not even like a marginal association as of this time. So we'll see. We'll see with with 3rd-year scans, with 5-year scans, 3rd set of scans.
Yeah.
If an association appears, we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I wish I could push the fast forward button or like peek into the future. I'm very curious about those numbers. Okay. So when you first went and had that first blood test and you had that, holy crud, my LDL is really high and now I'm depressed. You had certain views about cholesterol, and now fast forward to you've essentially completed what your study set out to complete. How have your views on cholesterol changed from then to now?
I mean, there's just no getting around it. We just didn't have data in hand like we do now. I want to continue to be a good scientist and say, because this is just true, my meter doesn't go all the way over to 100% confident or 0% confident, right? It's slowly moving in one direction or another. But do I feel more confident than I did before of the possibility that cohort-wide the risk level may be lower for lean mass hyperresponders? Given all data in hand to this point in time, yeah, I would say the needle has moved somewhat, right? Again, it's not all the way over. It's a process, and it should be a process. We should continue to get more studies. So this is where I'll just mention the other thing, which is the conference you went to, the 3rd one of COSI. That was actually to fund a companion study. So I mentioned how we're trying to do an extension with the current Keto CTA study. But our companion study's code name is the Triad study. And we're hoping we can finally round up all of its funding and also get it underway here pretty soon as well. That gets back to the scientific principle I'm alluding to, which is also replication. So as groundbreaking as our Keto CTA study is, and certainly for as much blood and sweat as I put into it, I'd love if it could be definitive, but no single study is definitive. You want to continue to build on that research and get more and more data to know better.
So That's something that I haven't fully understood. I've heard you talk about the triad study, but like, what is the triad? I think the criteria are a little more relaxed, if I'm correct, and
Right.
that's about all I know. So,
Yes.
can you explain a little bit more about what that study will entail?
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, it's not finalized.
Oh, okay. No
What
wonder. Okay.
what I've pitched in general, and just don't hold me to it yet, is that it'll be more relaxed than what Keto CTA was, where in Keto CTA was HDL of 60 or higher, triglycerides of 100 and lower. In the triad study, more likely it's going to be something like HDL of 50 or higher and triglycerides of 100 and lower. I like those cut points a lot because a lot of people fit into that who are low carb and metabolically healthy. Probably the LDL is going to continue to stay at 190. We like 190 because that's where a lot of guidelines automatically assume high risk.
Mm.
And so if you are at 190 or higher, I believe that the present guidelines say that you should be on the maximally tolerated statin, for example. And then there's this other question of control group. And there's a lot of debate going on behind the scenes around that. So either we recruit another group of people who are also metabolically healthy, who also have HDL of 50 or higher, triglycerides of 100 or lower, because you can't even be on a high carb diet and still be metabolically healthy and see that. But if we did that, we'd want them to be lower baseline LDL. So if they could be naturally, say, lower than 100, that'd be great. I don't know what the ability of finding that is. When I say naturally, I mean without medication. But another possibility is that we do an actual RCT, a randomized control trial, where we recruit all low carbers, all with the triad that I just mentioned, and then randomize half to have, say, something like ezetimibe. And therefore, their LDL would drop with ezetimibe. We've seen this over and over again with people, especially in the low carb diet who are metabolically healthy, that you can usually see a substantial change. Not because we're necessarily asserting that that's going to be beneficial, but because the lipid hypothesis would posit it will be, right? So in theory, those people who go on the ezetimibe, who do see their LDL drop, should see a benefit that is shown through these longitudinal CT angiogram scans, that you'd actually see that they would get less plaque or might even regress more than their counterparts who aren't taking ezetimibe. And so to that extent, I think it'd be exciting. Mm-hmm. What's ironic, Christy, is that the debate behind the scenes is that a lot of cardiologists would say, well, that won't be good enough because it's not a statin. And my complaint here is, well, wait a sec, is this about LDL? It's like, because then does it matter how you lower it? Mm-hmm. Or is this really just about statins? Because
you lowered it, but not with the statin, so nope.
I thought the lipid hypothesis is that it doesn't matter how you lower it; it's the LDL that's the problem, and so however you do it is the solution, right?
Right. Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was like, you set me up perfectly, because my next question was going to be, so I asked you about how your feelings about cholesterol have maybe shifted. I've seen a lot of things, you put things out there. What has been the response by people, maybe, let's say, not in our community, like other people online responding to your work? Has anyone changed their mind? Has anyone been even curious? Has anyone thought it was or has everyone just been, what are you even talking about? Get out of here.
Yeah. What I'm writing a book on this whole experience. And one thing is that it's kind of, our studies sort of created a kind of giant natural experiment. You've heard of a natural experiment. You might have even taught natural experiments at this point, right? With fifth grade. Mm-hmm. So usually when we think of experiments, we think of something rearranged. And a natural experiment is usually something that we've theorized for a long time, but only through natural circumstances did it arise on its own. In many respects, our study has been a natural experiment in that if you had a particular opinion on how good or bad cholesterol is on your approach to our study, it might inform how you took the study, how you process it, and what you believed it would show and wouldn't show. And the Clearly analysis from last year kind of created this natural experiment because it was, like I said, it was kind of the outlier, and it had a number of anomalies to it. And then, without getting too into the details, I'll just say the credibility of that analysis kept going down and actually kept dropping, particularly as other independent analyses were coming in and all agreeing with each other and not with it. Then there's just also some other things with regard to the company that provides it that I'm also not going to get into. But basically, where it ultimately led was that we went to the journal and said, given XYZ reasons, we have to actually retract this paper that contains this Clearly analysis because we no longer believe in it. And there was no, given everything to that point, there was no objection from the journal. There was no objection from Clearly. And so at that point, it was, that paper was withdrawn and then ultimately retracted. Now, if you were just about wanting to understand, what were the facts and what weren't, then at the point where the Clearly analysis became an attachment for many people became very attached to that Clearly analysis. As its credibility changed, how much did your opinion of it change as well? And what we saw, and this is what I talk about in the book, is we saw an interesting cycle where before the Clearly data, many people were dismissing the study and saying it can't tell us anything, it takes too long for plaque to develop. When the Clearly analysis was published, because it looked as though there might be a higher level of plaque development for the cohort, even if it disagreed with the other analysis, they said, aha, the Clearly, actually, we changed our minds. We actually really like this study, and we like specifically this Clearly analysis. And then as the credibility fell off, a number of people moved back to the first position and said, actually, this study can't tell us anything anymore. There's not really much more to know, and there's not much more to say. So getting to where minds change, I'm a big believer of the 10% rule, which is that you're not going to convince half the world of something very easily. But there's a 10%, it's like a slippery slope. They're the hardest to shift their minds on. But there's a number of people who really are keeping their mind open. They are absorbing new data, new information, new observations. And as their minds shift, because they're linked up with a lot of other people, like, oh, wow, John Doe's mind changed on this. And Jane Doe's is also believed. I don't know, maybe there is. That's when I think things change quickly. It's not like say smoking, changed 5%, one decade, and then 10% the next decade, and then 15 to the next day. No, it was actually, once the 10% dropped over, then all of a sudden you had a big shift in the culture and the opinion and things like that. And I think it's that way with a lot of things in science.
Yeah. If anyone is curious about, if you haven't heard what Dave is talking about with the whole Clearly situation, I think you did a video with Dr. Barry about it, because I think that's where I watched it on his channel. So if you want to know, like, when this is over, go to Dr. Barry's channel. It was pretty recent, and they get all into like the drama of what went down with the first Clearly analysis of that data. So the last thing I want to dig in with you is something it's coming up right now. Like, there's screenings happening all over the country. It's going to be out on, I believe you said Amazon, which is what I'm waiting for next month. You can tell us the date, but talk to me about the cholesterol code documentary. I was not able to go to the premiere in Vegas when we were in Vegas. And so, but yeah, let us know, what is that documentary about? Have you been filming it kind of like in tandem the whole time with the study going on?
Yeah, Jen Eisenhardt is the director, and her team of Wide Eye Productions had the cameras rolling from literally the first point in time where I saw the first baseline scans. And it follows the whole story as it's going all the way through. Oh, I see one of your comments is, I'm stoked I'm seeing it Thursday in Dickinson, Tennessee. Guess what? I'm flying there. So I'll actually be at that showing.
Yes, I think that's Dr. Barry's showing, right? Dr. Barry's hosting that one. So, yep, Dave's going to be there. Dr. Barry, that's fantastic. Tennessee's too far for me, but awesome that you're going to get to go to that one.
And so, what's happening is before this gets released on Amazon, there's this like 30-day period where a bunch of folks all around the world have signed up to do a showing. And in the United States, they can show it in the theater. And if they get enough people registered to, come to the showing, it books the theater, and then everyone's charged, and now it's happening. And I myself am flying to 6 or 7 of them over the next 30 days.
Wow. Okay. So you're going to be traveling a lot in the next 30 days. Okay.
Yeah, but it's going to be fun because it's, this is the story of our research and everything that happened, good and bad. There's some things people don't know about that you'll be seeing for the first time. And it worked out that we got even more research plugged into the end compared to its version from last year. So I'm excited for everyone to see it. And yeah, the answer to your question is April 17th. April 17th, everybody will be able to rent it on Amazon. And at that point, I'm going to be, especially on that weekend, I'm going to ask everyone if they could also rate and review. If you want to help move it all the way into Prime, then what helps the algorithm and gets the muckety mucks interested is if it's really viral. And if there's a lot of people that are rating and reviewing it, then that helps it.
That's cool. So Barb is excited. Wait, hold on. Move. There we go. Barb is excited because she's attending the April 13th screening in Chicago. So that is cool. I promise you that I don't know if it'll be on April 17th, but right around there, I'm going to invite some people over. We'll rent it on Amazon, and I will definitely give it a review. I don't know if you know this. Do you have to be the one to rent? So I'm going to rent it, so I'm going to pay for it. But if people I know are here watching it, can they rate it too, even though they didn't pay for it, or just me because I paid for it?
I think it's just the person who rented
it, huh? Okay. Well,
if you love it so much that you go home and rent it and then also rate and review, as long as it's all legit, then that's not bad either.
Okay.
Also, by the way, I saw the screening in Chicago. I believe I'm also going to that one also.
Oh, okay, Barb. So you get to meet Dave. Dave is awesome.
It's the one with Jenny Middich, I believe. But yes. She's amazing.
Super cool. So, some of those people that were talking at COSI, were they we had so many, it was like speaker after speaker, and they were all great. But I think it was some of those people from the mental health group, like the group on stage with the mental health. They're in the documentary, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yep. I'm super excited about that because for those of you that don't know, and Dave, I don't know that I don't even remember if we talked about this, but my son went carnivore about a year after I did because of ADHD. And so he has seen, it was like a switch flipped in so many ways. And some of those changes happened within a week of switching his diet. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me, because we dealt with the nonsense, the symptoms, I'm not going to get into it here because that's not what this is about, but we dealt with a lot, and we tried a lot of different interventions to help him. And if I had only known sooner, but I didn't know, but when he was 15, just switched him to a carnivore diet. People ask me about that even Dr. Westman was like, but I don't think all kids need to be carnivore. And I'm like, but I don't either. But my kid never ate fruits and vegetables anyway. So he's not going to eat them anyway. So we removed all the processed food, and now he eats a lot of chicken, chuck roast, butter, eggs, all that good stuff. And, it was like a switch flipped, and obviously he wouldn't stick to it if he didn't feel the difference. But that metabolic mind, or whatever you want to call it, the mental health panel was fantastic. And even though none of them were specifically talking about ADHD, it was more like depression and bipolar and things like that. It was fantastic. And there was a lot of parallels there. So I think that was one of my favorite sessions.
Yeah, listen, I do my best to not get into the diet space too much because, of course, I'm already, trying to tackle one entire front, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm blown away by how much data we do have on hand for people who've seen efficacy from diet, that we don't at least use it to gather information temporarily, right? Like exactly what you said. I've heard this story so many times where it's in, say, a week to 10 days that you could see this radical change. Why wouldn't this at least be discussed as a protocol to find out? Like when you're putting somebody on that diet, there was already a protocol long before the carnivore diet called the multiple removal diet, because you're trying to determine if there's some kind of an allergy or intolerance. And that's been considered before. But there's something that's, I think, just such a stigma about red meat in particular that makes this like anathema for people. But if I'm not mistaken, the multiple removal diet, because I had a family member try this once, it was like rice was the one and only thing. And I would much more suggest something like steak or something like that only for like 7 to 10 days. But truly, if you just checked and then you saw the cessation of the symptoms so that you at least knew where your starting point is, you'd promised the person, you can have all the ice cream and fries or whatever after we do this, but we want to at least get this information to find out.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, like how many people just don't know it's an option, just don't know that this is a possibility. So sorry, I kind of get a little bit on my soapbox about this sometimes, but this documentary is full of people just like that, just like the people you talked about who are on the stage. And I just wish more people knew. That's all.
So I get on my soapbox with it too, because it's my son. So of course, right. That means a lot to me. So with him, I didn't take away his ice cream. We just switched it and we made it like a keto ice cream or a carnivore. Like we didn't just use sugar, like we used a different sweetener in there. But honestly, after a few months of doing that type of substitution for the sweets that he was, like so addicted to, just making it more of like a keto approved sweetener on his own, he phased that stuff out. He just stopped asking for it. I never said, probably you want to phase that. Like I never said anything. It was like his body just got over it. And then he was like, I don't want that anymore. So he hasn't had a dessert in probably a year and a half.
Wow.
And he goes to like, his cousin's birthdays and there's all kind of regular old cake and ice cream and whatever. He doesn't go, oh, I can't have it. Like he just doesn't care. Like all the little kids are running around eating it and he's just like, whatever. He's just like hanging out with his cousins, but they're all eating it and he's not sad about it. And he doesn't bring a substitution. Like I'd be happy, like, oh, I'll make you a keto thing and we could just take that. He doesn't care. It's crazy, but it happened naturally. It was amazing to watch. Incredible to watch, like, wow. He really doesn't want it. And we still have half my household still kind of just eats standard American. So there might be ice cream, there might be chips, like whatever might be in the house. He just, same as me. Like, I just don't care for that stuff anymore, but it's not even a temptation for him. So that just tells you how much better he truly must be feeling to be now 17 and just like sticking to it on his own. I'm not mom cracking the whip over here. I asked him for 30 days. He gave me 30 days as a handshake deal. And then it was like, he just hasn't looked back. So
wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Final thing. I know I said the other thing was the final thing, but final thing. What's in the future for you? Do you have anything else besides the triad study? Like, is there anything else? What are we planning?
Yes. So, I will say we have plans for Own Your Labs. There's some features we're rolling out. I've been pretty excited about that. I mentioned I'm writing a book.
Yes. You did mention that. Yes.
But honestly, probably one of my biggest loves right now is my podcast. I'm just having such a riotous good time with it. I like the sit down, talk about it experience. And I love having these guests that you and I have seen in the low carb carnivore space for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like really settling in and getting a lot more, I think, out of I'd love to get a lot more into the backstory. Like I had, during COSA, I had on Annette Bosworth and Sean Baker and Ken Berry and learned things about them that I had never known before. I don't know that they've ever shared before. And then, I get into some of the more interesting aspects of science. And it's great because when you get more into their background, you see how much it informs their decisions and the advice that they have and where they're coming from. For example, like Annette, I understand better why she cares as much as she does about brain health, but you'll have to see the episode to find out.
Yes. So I knew you had a podcast, but weirdly enough, my YouTube algorithm never suggested it to me. So then because I just met you, I did go search for it. So shout out to your podcast. It is fantastic. And I love a good long form. Like I love a good long. So because I like to put stuff on and then kind of just listen to it while I'm whatever. So I've only watched one episode because like I said, I just discovered it. It was super long and it was awesome. And it was Dr. Ovadia.
Oh, yes. That one was just released. So,
so I watched that one and I was like, okay, now I know where your podcast is. I can purposely go find it now and watch some more. But you're right. It was like way deeper than what you usually hear these people, because that one was, I think, between 3 and 4 hours. Like it was in depth and it was really, and that's the kind I like those, I'm like the opposite of a shorts person, like shorts and whatever. But I really like the long form content. So yeah, that's really awesome. So speaking of that, you guys, I have put all of Dave's links, including he has the 2 different YouTube channels, and then all the other socials are down in the description of this if you want to go find it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Dave, like you made my day. So thank you so much for coming on to my little channel and chatting with me. I really enjoyed this a lot, and I hope everyone else here did as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Christy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everybody.